Sing to me of the man, Muse, the man of twists and turns, driven time and again off course, once he had plundered the hallowed heights of Troy. Many cities of men he saw, and learned their minds. Many pains he suffered, heartsick on the open sea, fighting to save his life and bring his comrades home. Launch out on his story, Muse, daughter of Zeus. Start from where you will. Sing for our time, too.
Everyone's war is individual. One person goes to the Aleutians and is bored for 3 years. Another person is engaged in close combat, intimate killing, and has a wholly different experience. So it changes you. It modifies some of the things that you value. And certainly at times it's very dramatic and very vivid images will stay with you forever, and those do change you somewhat. And certainly the friendships you develop in wartime are some of the most intense and long-lasting that you'll ever have. You learn a lot about yourself. The veneer of civilization gets stripped off you. The superficial qualities that never got tested are now laid bare, and you end up in a situation where your character is probably more tested under the most ethically bruising conditions that exist on this planet. So what you end up with is a much better understanding of yourself. Sometimes that builds you up, and sometimes it makes you aware you have areas that you need to improve. But it's mostly a change on your internal landscape, not so much on your external view. You're still pretty much the same person. If you liked football before you went to war, you'll like football when you get home too. Your senses are much more acute on the battlefield. You're picking up everything, you're constantly tracking. You're trusting people beside you that they're tracking in their area. There's a sense of responsibility to your shipmates. There's a sense of trust and confidence in the guy on your left or the guy behind you is watching over his back and covering your back. So everything's more acute there. When you come back home again, there's a relaxation. And it's a pleasant relaxation. I mean, it feels good to be able to relax again. But there's always that reminder that you were at the top of your game when you were out there. You know, you had to be. You had no choice. There's a Marine general by the name of Droughty, who when I was a battalion commander, he came down, I commanded an assault battalion that would go in to minefields and open the way through the obstacle belts for the rest of the Marine Division to come through. So we had to go first into the minefields and the barbed wire and that sort of stuff. And he came down and he talked to all my NCOs about the 4 F's of combat. Fatigue, you're more tired than you've ever been. You're probably ill to some degree, whether it's because you've eaten something bad or you just got the flu or a cold. You're living rough. Fatigue, there's fear. There's just, it's just an omnipresent thing. You have to just deal with it. You get on with it. But in many people today, they will never feel fear. Or when they do, they consider it an aberration, not the daily routine of going to work, or maybe even falling asleep and hoping when the sun comes up, there won't be anybody managed to get into a position to get you. Then there's failure. You constantly have failures going on around you. War is a horrible tragedy. It's a horrible mess. You never operate with sufficient information. You're up against an enemy trying to confound you. So you've got fatigue. You're tired. You're always having to deal with fear and the fear of those around you. And you've got this potential for failure, and this very likely failure every day. And what offsets it is the 4th F, and that's friendships. And that's what really allows there are times when you'll walk inside another unit's lines and you can just relax for a little while. And it makes all the difference in the world. and it's why the intensity of those friendships is so strong. So it changes your view of the world when you're out there. The experience in Iraq has a lot of things that Joshua would understand when he stood outside Jericho, or Xenophon would understand when he made his march to the sea. If there's a difference about Iraq, it was, from some of my earlier combat experiences, it was that every day you went outside the FOB, you had to consider that the IED threat was one that maintained a prolonged sense of anxiety if you really thought deeply about it. Many of us would simply push it out of our minds because you had to get on with your job. You didn't need the distraction. But while in Iraq, the constant threat of IEDs was something that could wear on you, and a sense of humor and a sense of alertness, good training, trusting your buddies, really moderated that sort of anxiety to the point you grew very matter-of-fact about it. Coming home, I think the biggest difference is if you go back to the days of the ancient Greek soldiers sailing home, they had weeks to talk about things together, relax amongst one another, relax among people they knew, understood what they'd been through. If you go to World War II, it still took weeks, maybe even months to get home from the Pacific when the war was over. There was time. We have had Marines come home from this fight who were in a firefight 6 days before they landed back in the States. 6 days total. That included transit time down to Kuwait. That's how we used to go out. It was a very rapid reintroduction to the society, and you land at an Air Force base, and now you're riding down the road in a bus, and you're looking out the window at Americans going to work if you arrive during rush hour in Southern California, or if it's on a holiday weekend, you see people with their beach gear heading to the beach. And it's, you sense that you're on almost a different planet, frankly. So it's the speed of reintroduction to our society that's really the big difference. There are memories that will stay vivid. They will never dim. A certain smell will trigger something. It can be a Freightliner truck at a truck stop when you stop to get gas and you smell the diesel. There will be an immediate rush of memories, and they will not be at all, they will not lose their sharpness over the years. There's a book, Men at War, edited by Ernest Hemingway. It was written, I believe, in 1941-42 time frame, and he just put a collection of the best war stories, best being the most telling, together. And in his introduction, he says, there's nothing that's going to be asked of you that'll be worse than veterans who've gone before. I mean, you can't fight any harder than Union and Southern troops at Shiloh. You can't do any more than what the Marines did at Iwo Jima. So you know, no matter what you go into, if you listen to your NCOs, you're well trained, you keep faith in your leaders. It's not to say war is not a horribly tragic thing, but you can get through it. I've known concentration camp survivors, male and female, who went through it at a very young age, obviously, if I knew them, because they've aged over the years since World War II. And they talk about the resiliency of the human spirit, the illimitable potential of the human spirit. As a Marine, as a combat leader, the Vietnam veterans formed me as a man, as a Marine. The NCOs, senior NCOs, the officers who schooled us in the hills of Quantico, who were our commanders when we got out to the Fleet Marine Force, they were the ones who had been through this challenge, and we respected them. They passed on their lessons in very blunt terms. They were often, they saw their responsibility as getting us ready for what they knew, what history teaches us we would have to face. They really turned us into the fighting organizations, is what the Vietnam veterans did. And it was their tone being passed down to us that set the tone for the whole Fleet Marine Force that I joined. The spirit of the Marine Corps was pretty much the same as was passed down from the Marines of the Revolution to the Marines of World War I, World War II, Korea. There's a saying in the Marine Corps, old breed, new breed, doesn't make a damn bit of difference, Chesty Puller said, so long as it's the Marine breed. And that that lack of institutional confusion, that firmness in what we thought was important, the human character that the Marines passed down, that's what really made us what we were. It was the operational renaissance was more one that would impact on our tactics and the way our units fought in terms of maneuver warfare. One of our most articulate Supreme Court Associate Justices was a man by the name of Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr. And he was very much formed as an infantry officer in the Civil War. And he was talking to a bunch of his veteran buddies. I think it was many years after the Civil War, 40 years later. I think it was up in Boston. I'm not certain the location, might have been in Washington. And he said, we've faced the incommunicable experience of war. Now, if one of the most articulate Supreme Court justices cannot articulate this, clearly I'm not able to, and most of the rest of us are not. Some people may have that gift, I do not. So yes, it's a very personal experience, and it does change your view. There are many things that will never bother you again when you come out of there. It'll create a sense of almost dismissal of things that some people get quite worked up about. But it depends on what your experience was too. It's not something that can be universal in terms of how it's going to affect you. It's going to affect you, and it's individual. But that's like any dramatic encounter, and time does heal most wounds. The guys that came off Iwo Jima obviously were changed forever. It didn't stop them from becoming university presidents and professors, or becoming CEOs of companies, becoming good husbands and fathers. Part of it was the draft was on, but to join the Marines, to be one of the best, one of the toughest, you know, what guys did. My older brother was in the Marines in Vietnam, and so it wasn't a real deep thinking about it. It was very, I was kind of physical, enjoyed being outdoors, so I'd join up, be in the infantry for a few years, and get out. I didn't always like the jobs in the Marines, frankly, and I grew to hate minefields at a very young age, but I just loved hanging out with Marines, frankly. I mean, they're just the most selfless, the most rambunctious people in the world, and I just like hanging out with them. It's just been a privilege to hang around with them all these years. It's a journey. Really it's about discovery of yourself, is what it's all about. If the only real victory for any of us, especially those of us who've been modestly successful in our various careers, the only real victory is being a little better today than you were yesterday. Well, then these experiences are probably because of the storms that you encounter. They're going to turn you into the best sailor possible. You know, you don't become a great sailor every day going out, only when it's nice and has a nice kind of steady breeze with no whitecaps. You got to go into storms, and if you go off and test yourself in this way, you'll be you have every reason for optimism that you'll be more selfless, you'll be more courteous. For me, certainly it's a spiritual experience, but it's dramatic and it's vivid, but I would not call it sacred. Friendships probably are sacred, but I don't believe that for me it was sacred. It was nauseating at times. It was about as ugly, but not sacred. It was a horrible experience in some ways that would be almost, I'd say, profane. But the friendships were probably sacred, yeah. when you come back, a point that was made to me by a young Marine who'd lost an arm, by a young Navy corpsman who'd run to the aid of Marines, lost a leg to a machine gun fire. They said, we are not victims. We made choices. We are not victims. And they resent those who would portray them as victims. And when you see that level of human spirit, especially in a nation that exalts victimhood today, when you see these people who've had life-changing wounds at ages, one of them too young to even buy a beer legally, and the spirit that they have, certainly there's something profoundly moving about that, and something that causes us all to question, could we resist falling into certain traps, whether we lash ourselves to a mast or we find some other way to avoid doing so. But they, you know, I forget Dante's Inferno, where you know, we make our own heaven or hell. You know, it's up to us what we do with the experience when we come out of it.